coronavirus has changed all of our lives, but how will it impact our future? Does this change everything? I'm Chris Knight. On this episode of Does This Change Everything? Public Sector Finance. How does the new coronavirus impact the way local governments operate and get financing for projects? Will cities need more help setting up and supplying hospitals, organizing public transport, perhaps staffing police and other emergency services? Will public authorities need special new help funding projects that prepare cities for pandemics? We'll find out from Frank Lee, the head of the European Investment Advisory Hub at the European Investment Bank. The Advisory Hub is a one-stop shop at the bank that helps people in cities plan projects and find the right financing. Frank, does the coronavirus change the way public sector financing works?
Chris, that's a difficult question to answer, to be honest. I think it really depends on obviously on how long this situation will continue. Let us all hope that it's relatively short-lived, and that we can sort of resume back to normal, as it were, as quickly as possible. I think it's important for people to understand, as you mentioned before, that the public sector has a lot of things on its plate, a lot of areas where it needs to invest, some of which is more sort of short-term and some of which is more longer-term. I would imagine that with the crisis onset, there's really going to be a complete focus on all short-term measures, as you say, supporting the police or providing for unemployment benefits and helping people to just get along on a day-to-day basis. And I suspect that what we will see is the public sector, unfortunately, neglecting some of its longer-term investment priorities. So here I'm talking about infrastructure type investments, whether it's transport links or communication links, energy links. What I feel is that the longer this crisis goes on, the more that will be neglected, and I think that will have repercussions certainly in the medium to long term.
I mentioned cities, Frank, but the public sector financing, it's not just cities, is it? Can you tell people what public sector financing is and what it involves?
Yeah, sure. Indeed, there's different levels of government and public sector, as it were, that we work with. This is obviously ranging all the way from sort of national governments down through regional governments, and of course we then end up with local authorities and cities, as you say. They all have different priorities, different roles to play, obviously within a national context, and we try to take that on board. What we generally seem to see is that cities are obviously more focused on citizens and the sort of more immediate short-term needs that they have, and their budgets are affected by that, whereas governments and national bodies tend to have more of a longer-term focus, a medium-term focus, to understand how their investments can help connect the country better, ultimately benefiting cities, of course, but having a wider perspective.
So this is probably going to make it more challenging for you and your team. Can you tell people how your team is adapting to this new working environment?
Yeah, we've already experienced a new way, let's say, or to some extent we're being forced to adapt, given that we're all working from home these days. I suppose the silver lining on all of this is that we're actually getting some good experience and experimenting, if you were, with new ways of working here. I'm talking about using more sort of online tools and our website and various forms of online communication to reach out to our clients. It's obviously important that we keep communicating with our clients. We want to make sure that they are aware that we are there to help, and that we're to some extent running business as usual. But it's leading to new ways of thinking and ways in which we deliver things. I hope that at the end of the day, there will be some other longer term benefits from this, perhaps through reduced traveling and reduced need to have sort of face-to-face meetings, and perhaps being a bit more efficient through online tools.
Okay, thanks, Frank. The bank is organizing a big package of assistance to respond to the new coronavirus. Where do you see the bank's advisory services playing a role in this package to help the public sector?
Yeah, so the packages that have been recently announced are obviously designed to get more liquidity per se out into the market. It's designed really from EIB's perspective, I think, to help businesses, primarily small and medium-sized enterprises, but also businesses operating in the healthcare industry, research on vaccines, what have you. From a public sector side, I think our role is also to try and reach out to them and give them some new ideas about how they can use their funding. One good example, I think, is the European structural funds, which is an area that we work a lot with and helping public sector to use this funding package that they have, primarily to set up and use more financial instruments. So I'm talking about setting up guarantee instruments or equity instruments to help again stimulate investment, keep investment going in these difficult times. The Commission recently announced a package of support where they're hoping that some of the unspent European structural funds will be more easily spent now. So they're loosening some of the criteria around what it can be used for. And our work, particularly under the FI Compass platform, which is a platform that we set up with the Commission to help public authorities, to give them ideas around how to use financial instruments. We're hoping that this platform will be used now to reach out to these public authorities and educate them, make them aware of the changes that are coming through, some of the benefits that this will imply for them. And then I suppose more in the medium term, moving forward and helping to set up new instruments that can better respond to what will probably be a longer term need for more affordable finance or relaxed conditions around collateral, reduced interest rates if we perceive that the market is going to react badly to this, et cetera, et cetera. On the project side, I think we're already doing quite a lot in terms of helping in healthcare sector. A number of projects that we've already done in hospitals, for example, and we see a couple of new ones coming through. So there's a range of things that we're trying to do as part of the package. It's true that advisory is more of a long-term game, so our ability to help people in the very, very short term is obviously quite limited, but nevertheless, we're playing our part.
Do you have any tips for people working in the public sector? What if some people in cities, they're thinking that this is not a good time to do projects? Maybe it's time to put on the brakes and not think of new things to do to improve people's lives. What would you tell people like that?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think what I would say is it's obviously difficult for the public sector to think right now, medium to long term, and that's obviously understandable. There must be obviously huge pressures on them to react to the short term challenges that are there. But what I would plea to them to do is at least not lose sight of the longer term perspective of the bigger picture. I think that if they can keep going with the work that we're doing with them, for example, on preparing these larger projects, these larger infrastructure projects, I would say that this is something that's equally important, because if they stop doing that, I think the ramifications are, at least in the longer term, will be quite severe. Because these projects really do take a long time to implement in themselves, and any kind of stoppage like this can really have significant delays. So we're going to do our part to reach out to our clients, be as proactive as we can, and try to keep them focused on some of these more medium to longer term objectives.
That's great. Good advice. Thank you, Frank Lee, head of the European Investment Advisory Hub at the European Investment Bank. This was Does This Change Everything? From the European Investment Bank, the EU Bank.